Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shenanigans with Shreya podcast. It's our last episode for season 3. I'm already excited for season 4, but we need a bit of rest beforehand. I wanted to dedicate the final episode of this season to something that I think is quite relevant to everyone. I've been thinking about it for a while, and it's about the concept of doing too many things all at once, whether it's societal or social media pressure of, by the time you're 25, you need to be running a business and living your dream life and then having flawless skin and traveling all the time. And, there's so many different things to be doing at all points in your life. And it is literally impossible, by the way, trying to do everything all at once. And that's probably the fastest way to get burnt out. So today I wanted to talk us through this blueprint that we can use in our 20s and beyond. And the whole basis of this episode is literally the thought that came to me, which was you can do everything you want in life, but you cannot do it all at the exact same time. So today we are going to be breaking down why the minute you start overwhelming yourself with different things to do, your prefrontal cortex, which is your decision-making part of the brain, is going to shut down. It will get overloaded. We're going to try to talk about how you can actually focus on more things just by thinking less, which I think is a really fun concept. And then how to also just build sustainable systems that really work for you, not against you. When I was younger, you'd see all these videos, especially around 10-ish years ago when the whole concept of, 5 a.m. routines and stuff like that came into being. And I tried it and I was like, it's not feasible because if I want to get my 8 hours of sleep, I have to sleep at 9. And that's just not feasible in the life and daily routine that I have. So I think you have to make your own systems that are sustainable to who you are. Like if you have a different waking up time or a different sleeping time, whatever, as long as you're getting your 8 hours in, guys, because I cannot emphasize enough how important 8 hours of sleep is. But as long as you're making systems that work for you. So yeah, let's dive into the last episode of season 3. I'm excited for this one. So here we go. Now, I feel like we all get these sparks of energy sometimes where we want to change absolutely everything overnight. You get so many ideas and there must be so many ideas on the back burner. But what's actually going to happen when you try to change your entire life overnight is that your brain's control center, which we've discussed as the prefrontal cortex, that's responsible for when you're making decisions, when you're forming a habit even. It's that part of the brain that's getting, reinforced again and again, and also impulse control. But we have to think about parts of our brain like they're on a budget, right? They're not unlimited on energy. They have, resources that they use wisely. And our brain consumes a lot of energy, a lot of glucose, right? If you try to stack 10 different new habits or 10 different new things at the same time, you can actually think of it like balancing books. So you can balance 1 book, 2 books, fine. But trying to balance 10 books, you're going to fall over or the books are going to fall over, and your brain experiences executive function overload. So every time when you're making a decision, and it can be as simple as, what am I wearing today? What am I eating today? What time am I going to go hang out with my friends? Should I write my actual dissertation or should I go to the gym? Like all of this thinking is burning through that energy, burning through that glucose. And what's really interesting is when you start experiencing decision fatigue, studies have actually shown that your theta brainwaves increase in your prefrontal cortex, which basically means that you're getting tired because those are the kind of brain wavelengths that get induced when you're in your almost going to bed, borderline asleep state, right? So in a way, it is your brain's way of saying, hey, we're out of fuel. You're going to feel tired. When that happens, it's natural that your prefrontal cortex is just going to shut down and you want to rest. Your brain defaults to what is the least energy path available, which is usually, scrolling on your phone for 3 hours or not having to really think as much. So we tend to resort to our screens, resort to consuming media, doing something that does not involve as much brain power. And again, this isn't to say that it's necessarily bad to be doing that. It's just that it's your own self-protection mechanism that the brain has. So the way that I'd go about it, and I think is the best way to fix it, is to try to stop optimizing every single area all at once and trying to focus on just one area or one system at a time. So if you want to start eating healthy, instead of focusing on absolutely everything, you can just start off with the basic, okay, for breakfast, let's start off with breakfast. And then you can build it up to lunch, dinner gradually. Or even if you want to go to the gym or you want to read more, again, it's a step-by-step thing. But if you do all of that together, you're going to get overwhelmed. Speaking of overdoing, let's talk about overthinking. I had this realization recently that when you genuinely think less, you actually end up doing more, because sometimes there's this paralysis that comes with overthinking where you're spending more time just thinking rather than actually doing things. And I've realized the way that my routines and my schedules really work for me is because I see what I have to do because I plan them beforehand and I just start doing it and I don't really think about it. So like, for example, say 10 a.m., I just had like work on my dissertation on my calendar. Everything that's on my calendar prompts me to do it. So I don't really think about it. It's like my calendar is doing thinking for me, which is a bit of an odd way to phrase this, but you get what I mean. So a lot of the times it's like I'm sitting down, I'm doing things, and then I realize halfway through that, oh, I'm actually doing this. Like I haven't thought about oh my God, I'm going to have to open my laptop and sit down. Like I just do it. And I think sometimes thinking less about the steps you have to take allows you to do more. Because it can happen that you want to say you want to go to the gym or you want to actually sit down and study. And, sometimes you're just overanalyzing like, oh my God, like is today the best day? What if I go tomorrow? These excuses start popping up the more you let your brain loose, essentially. And what's happening is that when you overthink, you're activating the part of your brain called the default mode network. So the default mode network, it's a bit of a funny thing. It's responsible for your rumination, right? Thinking all the time, your thoughts in the past. And when it starts running wild, it will start interpreting things like, oh, I don't really think I want to do this task. Like the minute you feel like you don't really want to do something, it's going to start treating it like a threat. The default mode network will trigger your amygdala, which is the fear center, and will release cortisol. So the more you overthink, the more you're stressing yourself out quite literally. And then suddenly, stepping outside your room or writing an essay or whatever it is starts to feel like a bigger task than it actually is, because that's how your brain has perceived it, essentially. A good way to bypass this threat response is to bridge that gap between, the intention of, hey, I want to do something, and the action of, I'm going to do it, before that default mode network overthinking steps in. So when you want to do something, I'd suggest try to count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then physically move, whether it's, opening your laptop or getting out of your seat. So moving helps to downregulate the default mode network because you start engaging in the motor cortex part of your brain. And then that action creates momentum. And then you actually start doing things. And as I said earlier, like sometimes it's just about starting, because once you've started doing what you wanted to do, it's actually fine. It's more so just the thought of starting something that I think sometimes takes longer brain power and takes more energy than necessary. Now, I have spoken about dopamine quite a bit on this podcast, and understandably, because dopamine is a pretty important, prevalent neurotransmitter of the brain. And we've talked a lot about dopamine, but I did want to reemphasize between the high frequency digital dopamine and the tonic baseline dopamine. So high frequency dopamine comes from, mentioned before, doom scrolling, notifications, these low effort rewards where things are instant, right? You can instantly access something. And when you spend your resting time doom scrolling, your brain isn't really resting, actually. It's processing a lot of information, which keeps your nervous system in the state of fight or flight. When you really want some downtime, rest is quite deliberate. And I think we have to be a bit more intentional about it now because we have things like doom scrolling available to us. But resting would mean stepping away from your screens and engaging in low dopamine, high presence activities, right? So it could be like, if you want to break, go on a walk without headphones, or listening to an album from start to finish, and writing in a journal, sitting in the sun, reading a book, things like that. When you schedule downtime for yourself, and if you haven't, guys, I really highly recommend that you do, you give your pineal gland, your autonomic nervous system, and your dopamine receptors time to just reset and upregulate. And I do think, this is something that I had the realization when I was in secondary school about how if you have time to do an hour or 2 hours of homework or, work on a project, whatever it is, you have at least an hour or two to give back to yourself. Because I think a lot of times, especially when we're in our busy phases of life, we think that you have to earn your rest. I think it's really important to prioritize all that. Now, to wrap up this final episode of season 3, I did want to take a moment to reflect on how insane this specific season of the podcast has been. It's been really amazing in that sense that for the first time during this season, we've gotten emails from people wanting to be on the show, specifically from America. So shout out to American listeners, because the vast majority of my listeners are from America, which is pretty cool because I've actually never been. But, we got to speak to such amazing people. I got my brother on, which was fun. Got to talk to so many of my wonderful friends. as well as some really lovely guests. And we also got the chance to record our first ever live show at the Crosswires Festival in Sheffield, which was so out of my comfort zone. And I was a little scared to do it, honestly, but the second I stepped on stage, I was like, oh my God, like this is fun. It's a culmination of this podcast in live form, you know? So I'm very grateful to have gotten that opportunity. I also did want to share a tip that I feel like over the last year or so has really helped me progress within certain projects and aspects of my life, which is consistency. When I was younger, I really, really struggled with consistency. Like I'd start projects and, you know, in the first few weeks, it'd be fine, but then I wouldn't be able to keep up with that constant repetition of having to, whether it's post something or stick to something really. And I think with this podcast, it's one of the first things that I was intentionally very consistent with, where I was like, I will make time for this. I will put this in my schedule. We will make it happen on a weekly basis. So, you know, each season is 12 episodes, and for 12 weeks straight or more, depending on how the planning of the season goes, you stick to it. And I think in a way, it's helped me really build the momentum for the podcast, but also prove to myself that, hey, you could actually be consistent if you try, especially because it takes around like 2 to 3 months to form a habit. It's really important to stick to whatever you're doing if you're trying to do something new, to do it for around 3 months before adding an additional thing to your plate, because we don't want things spiraling out of control. I also just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone who's listened to this season. It's been our most successful season so far. I've really enjoyed, you know, recording these episodes. Now we are obviously going to be back with season 4 after a brief break with some super fun guests, I'm hoping, more deep dives. A little personal update is that this is the last episode I'm recording in the UK. So for those of you who may know, I've been doing my master's in the UK ever since I've started this podcast, actually. And the master's is coming to an end, so I've been writing my thesis, or as the Brits call it, my dis. And the ending of this season has actually coincided pretty well with me having to lock in for my thesis as well. And moving forward, the next time you hear from me is going to be from a completely new location, a new country, which is going to be super exciting. I'm excited to share more on what's to come in my academic/professional life. It'll be a very fun, culturally immersive experience for me. I'm learning a whole new language for it as well. Kind of pivoting to a different side of biomedical sciences. I'm really excited for the future, and I've been enjoying the summer, and I hope you've been enjoying your summer as well. Thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon for season 4 of Shenanigans with Shreya. Ciao!